So how's the reboot going there, Steve?
Pretty good. I can't find any metal boots anywhere, though.
How are your sales?
They're up.
Oh, good.
There you
Definitely.
go. Got that going for you.
Starting to drop. Hey, welcome to iFanboy, the comic book discussion show from iFanboy.com. I'm Steve.
You are. I'm Ron.
And I'm Connor. And recently we just did a show about the DC Reboot, which is the big thing going on in DC right now, where in September they're changing all their titles back to one, starting some characters over. So we thought we would go in and talk about the history of reboots.
The idea of the reboot.
The idea of the reboot. What is a reboot? What has come before? Why is this not the newest thing that's ever happened, or the worst thing that's ever happened?
Why is DC considered to be reboot happy?
Whoa there, don't reboot me. But okay, hold on.
But yeah, and it actually spawned some arguments amongst ourselves as to exactly what a reboot is and that sort of thing.
It's because reboot is first of all, it's a loaded term.
It is a loaded term.
It's a term that comic fans freak out when they hear.
Yep. And not just comic fans, genre fans. Reboots exist. Reboots exist in movies and in TV all the time.
The James Bond reboot.
Battlestar Galactica got rebooted.
Yeah.
Star Trek recently got rebooted with the movies. So
Yet on my computer, it's very helpful.
yeah, exactly.
When things aren't going well?
Yeah, so the term comes from computers, which is the idea of it's not working, let me turn it off.
Have you tried to turn it off and turn it back on again?
And turn it back on and start from scratch. So at the heart, that's the basic definition of a reboot, which is to end what you're doing now and start something new.
Right. So what do we think about reboots in general? Do we like them?
If done well. I think
it's like anything.
I think done well, and if not completely superfluous.
For some reason, I think there's more forgiveness and embracing of reboots in TV and film media than there is in comics.
There has to be.
People are less insane who like it.
Well, no, but also
there's more people. I mean,
you're not talking about. They're not less insane. It's just they're more drowned out.
There's more normal people.
But okay, but also there's a necessity to it with Star Trek. You have to
because the actors die.
Yeah, because Kirk is 70.
And McCoy's dead.
He's 80. Whatever. He's old as fuck.
Yeah. Did that show get canceled? The shit my dad said show.
Yes.
Oh, did?
Yeah,
How quickly?
Not quickly. It went a whole season.
Oh, okay. Anyway, but they're not doing another one?
No.
Shatner. Anyway, right, so that's a very realistic reason. But in comics, the characters don't age. But so...
They age up and down all the time.
Right. So I guess in comics, what we say, the definition of reboot, or at least what we believe, is that when you end a series and say everything that's happened is gone, and doesn't matter, and now you're going to start from scratch.
Now, what's funny is that is the definition of a reboot.
Right.
That has almost never actually happened in comics.
Exactly. And that's not happening in the DC reboot.
Yeah, there have been reboots, but the idea of starting from complete scratch, starting from A, has almost never happened.
Well, the term reboot is a catch-all term, and there's hard and fast rules about what it means.
This is where we disagree. This is the disagreement with you.
Wikipedia, though, some dude wrote that, and he applied his rules.
Right. But I think the generally accepted rules is that it's the end of a series, wiping away stuff, and starting from scratch.
Yeah, that's
then if you take one thing in that they've done before, well, then it's not a reboot.
That's a retcon. That's a retroactive continuity.
It doesn't. They're all subjective terms. There's not.
Well,
I mean, retroactive continuity is changing something that you thought happened, but without changing everything else. Whereas reboot is starting over.
Right, use your example that we were talking about. Like when we were planning the show, we were talking about what reboots happened, and you said
I said Spider-Man.
They rebooted Spider-Man. The One More Day. You said was a reboot. Wasn't a reboot. It was a retcon.
That's a retcon.
At what point though is that detail not
because it's only they took out one thing.
If they're rebooting Action Comics and you have a new Superman thing, well, so at what point are there no details? Like if you name him Cal, well, it's not. Then it's a retcon.
No, because they're literally starting over from him as being a Smallville. That's a reboot.
So what they're doing? I mean, yes, the essence of the characters. There are certain elements that get carried over. It's not going to be Tim.
So what's the line?
From Bipton.
Again, it's starting over from zero. They're going back to Smallville.
Not zero.
They're going back to Smallville and telling stories again.
The difference with Spider-Man is what happens.
So it's time-based. It's chronological.
Somewhat, yeah. Because what happened?
That is the definition of it.
What happened with Spider-Man is that
who wrote that definition?
You took
people who Shakespeare.
So it's no good unless Shakespeare wrote the definition.
I'm just saying, there's no hard and fast rule.
The problem with the Spider-Man example is that they took one element of the character's life and changed that, and then had that affect the title.
Okay, so when my computer isn't working because Firefox is not responding and it's freaking out, I go, well, I'm going to reboot it. Now when I come back, everything else is the same, but Firefox is working. That's not a reboot.
Well, that's not storytelling. That's a computer.
So
yeah,
but what I'm saying is, where does this rule come from? Who made this definition?
From people who make stories. I mean, that's
writers.
There's no rule.
There is a rule.
There isn't.
We just told you.
We just
told you what the rule was. That's the rule. Starting from zero.
No, there's a rule. I can't drive 35 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. That's
Who made that rule? Somebody made it up. It just made up.
No, it's a law.
Shakespeare didn't make that rule
up. We voted for. But this stuff is all subjective. It can be anything.
No, that's not true.
If you want to think that way, you're entitled to it.
They're so fucking patronizing.
But the difference,
it's not. It's just
the difference is, had they taken Amazing Spider-Man and said Mephisto messed with it, changed his life,
which they talked about going back to high school would have been a reboot.
Right. If they relaunched Amazing Spider-Man #1 and basically did what they did with Ultimate Spider-Man, that would have been a reboot. But all they did was change one aspect of his past. That's a retcon. That's the difference. That's the subtle difference. The series continued. He was still in the Avengers.
He's still everything about his life was the same except for that one aspect.
Right, exactly. So, whereas a reboot is, we're going to take all this stuff, throw it out the window, and we're going to take the essence of the character and start again and start telling new stories. That's the essence of the difference, at least how I see it.
Do you think it has to be chronological?
I think it has to do with wiping out the past.
No. Yeah. Do you have to take Batman back to when he started to be Batman? Do you take him back to when he was Thomas Wayne? Okay, so you can't say you can fill in that space without starting from that point.
You could start from he's been Batman for 10 years. What you're doing is
as long as you're wiping away what happened before.
As long as you're saying I'm emptying
where's
the
the line
document
of what's everything?
It's whatever the writer wants to do. That's the thing.
That's the subjective part.
Right, yeah. No, it's what the creative team does.
I know.
But
the point is Spider-Man didn't get wiped away.
Yeah. Spider-Man didn't get just one aspect got wiped away. That's a retcon. You see,
it's like if they took a character and said all this time he's been a secret alien. That wouldn't be a reboot. That's a retcon. That they changed one aspect of his character.
What they did was they said we're ending the series and we're relaunching it and now he's an alien. That's a reboot.
What if you start calling it Ultimate Comics Spider-Man?
Well, that's
so. You can see why it's a hot.
Well, what's funny is there's.
Here's the thing. I don't care about what happens to the characters. I just like the technical terminology.
Right.
Well, that's a pretty clear thing. So 58 was the first time really, and again, it's DC.
Right. It wasn't recognized at the time, but in 1958,
they didn't have the terminology back then.
Yeah, it was somewhat. Basically, when DC restarted superhero comics after Wortham and stuff like that, when they introduced Barry Allen as the Flash, that really started. They rebooted the DC universe.
And superheroes, you had a new Green Lantern, you had a new Flash, whereas previously you had old versions of them. Now you have these new, completely different versions of the characters. That was the first reboot.
Exactly, and started a legacy of DC whenever they just felt just hitting the reset button.
Which made a lot of sense up until the last 30 years because in the past kids read comics for 5 or 6 years and the new kids read comics for 5 or 6 years. So it didn't matter that you constantly restarted because their audience
they just reprinted the old stuff.
And
they did that too.
This is a reboot.
And the idea
start doing that,
and so what happens is mainly with DC they got to the point in the 1980s where the continuity had become so mired with history.
There was multiple Earths, multiple versions of characters.
30 years of stories and nobody really keeping them all at bay. So they decided to reboot the DC universe via an event, Crisis on Infinite Earths. And
that's the most famous reboot. Yep. The thing is, though, and people who are reading now on the internet freaking out about the current DC reboot have a misconception of what Crisis actually did.
Okay, so what a Crisis?
They think because it's a reboot that they're going to wipe away every single aspect of the character.
Then it's not a reboot; it's a
retcon.
Seriously, no. According to your definition,
no. They're going. No, because you're whatever. They changed the characters' aspects that didn't work, and they kept the aspects that did work.
Right.
So while history might have changed, they didn't get rid of Jason Todd as Robin. They didn't go back to Dick Grayson. The history was still there.
Right.
But they started fresh with the characters.
Yeah, to his point, Crisis on Infinite Earths, what it did was it took all the multiple Earths, they took the best of what they thought the best of the characters were, distilled them down, relaunched some titles, and then in the specific cases of Superman and Wonder Woman, absolutely rebooted them, started off at #1, retold the origin story, and said
nobody had ever met Wonder Woman before. She showed up in the middle of Legends. No one ever knew who she was. They completely started over for most characters.
And said this is the starting point. From here on, this is when we're starting.
Yeah.
And then what happened was through the 90s, they had a bunch of not total reboots, but more retcons with 0 Hour.
Those are retcons.
Those are retcons. Those are that thing we told you. Well, actually, something else happened, and but that's where the joke that DC keeps hitting this reset button, where when things aren't working, they just kind of try it again.
Here's the thing, though, is that all the semantics aside or anything, everybody's thing is, does these stories not matter?
Right.
Which is stupid. There it is. I'm saying it to you right now. It's stupid because they still exist. You can go read them. Our friend Tom does a podcast about them. Those stories are still there.
A lot of people get hung up on the numbering and like, well, now this book that was at 700 is now back at 1, and there's all the 700 issues don't matter. The number doesn't mean anything. The number is just...
And matter doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, they're stories. Did you read them? Did they affect you?
Did you enjoy them?
Are
they still in your long
box? Then
box?
they mattered.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, in that sense. You know, whether it still applies to the current canon is irrelevant.
And really the thing about the reboot, the most important aspect of it, which I think DC is focusing on this time, is to simplify.
Metal boots.
Yeah.
Simplifying collars. They want, the whole point of it is we've gotten too complex. It's time to wipe away the are we doing that now? Is that what we're doing?
I forgot. This is what Steve does.
Right. So the whole, and now we're talking seriously with collars.
Anyway, so
the whole point is to simplify. Right. To get rid of the aspects that complicate matters, that made it confusing, get back to the essence of the characters, and start over telling new stories. Right. And that's really the whole point of a reboot. So if your essence of a character is good, you keep it. If your essence is muddled or you want to do something new, then you change it.
Yep.
So you're seeing that with, from what we can tell, Superman. You know, there's characters in those descriptions that look totally different, whereas some look the same because ain't nothing wrong with Batman. So you don't have to change his history. But Superman, for various reasons, not all storytelling related, business possibly, they have to change things. And Wonder Woman has not caught on, so we change things.
Now we're talking a lot about DC because they have a history of it, but Marvel's done this kind of like they've done it in their own way. So in the late '90s, we had the Onslaught event, which kind of like fucked up with everything. And
who did that? Who was in charge of Marvel?
Bob Harris. Yeah.
Oh, who's in? Oh,
anyway. But and what they did was they relaunched Fantastic Four, Avengers, and Iron Man, Captain America under this Heroes Reborn banner, and it was a starting from #1, the beginnings of all that.
And who was the creators?
Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because if you think back to that time, they basically took the image creators and brought them in.
Yeah. One grouping of image creators.
At the time, those books were the least popular books of Marvel.
Yeah, it was the lowest point in event. Like that was the time that was with the blue and long hair Thor, and like it was a bad time for Marvel.
And Cap in the armor. Yeah. So they took all these books now that are hugely popular that then were hugely unpopular and rebooted them in a separate pocket universe.
Right. And what they did was they gave themselves an escape hatch for when the inevitable happened, and Liefeld and Jim Lee and all them fell by. Well, actually, Liefeld got booted from it, and so then they went back to the regular Marvel. So it was more of a Age of Apocalypse-esque
What was the bit where, like, cause when I started reading around that time, that
was when we were in college, yeah.
Yeah, but at a certain point, like, Busiek took over the Avengers.
That was after
2000,
right?
Yeah,
but there were new #1s or something.
Yeah, so at #1.
Yeah, so that wasn't Heroes Reborn because
Heroes Reborn was Liefeld, Jim Lee.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. See, I always think that Heroes Reborn is that, but
remember Cap had the eagle on his head.
I wasn't reading then.
Yeah, you've seen the pictures though, the big boob cap.
Yeah. I don't want to think.
But so that didn't work, so they went back to it. Then a couple years go by, Marvel gets through their business stuff. They get new management and new editors, stuff like that, and
what do we do with these horrible covers?
Basically what they did was they rebooted the Marvel Universe under the Ultimate banner, and with Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimates, and Ultimate X-Men. And the only difference between what DC's doing now and what Marvel did with Ultimate is that they just kept going with the old one too. So they wanted best of both worlds. So they said, hey, we've got these great characters, we're starting from scratch. Here you go, but for all you diehards, you can still keep going with this,
and they're still around.
Yeah, which is interesting, which is a kind of have your cake and eat it too kind of moment. Yeah,
but Marvel's never really done the full-on
line-wide
reboot. I think they need to.
I don't think they will.
I don't think they will either. Yeah. But I think I've been saying for a long time that both DC and Marvel need to do some sort of simplification. Yeah. So that's why I'm excited with the DC thing because
the thing is, it's funny because people say the reason for DC doing it is, well, it's better for new readers. They can jump on #1. But what happens in 8 months?
Well, it's the same. It's a persistent problem. I don't think they cancel all the books that aren't working, launch new #1.
I don't think it's with the number. I think the new readers thing is about the simplifying the characters and the histories.
How much do you know about?
Yeah,
but that's going to be a problem in 2 years.
No, but I think unless the storytelling is altered so that it's not told the way they tell stories now.
Yeah, and they said they are changing the way they're doing storytelling.
Yeah, so it's going to be more accessible.
Yeah, but which is kind of like. Depends on what kind of reader you are, but are they going to eschew all of the current readers, the people who like long-form narrative storytelling? I understand that the way that Gotham Central was told is not good for attracting new readers, but it doesn't mean I don't want to have that kind of story sometimes.
Yeah, but it's like
you might have to find that elsewhere.
Yeah,
in Marvel or in any
right, and maybe maybe that's the way it works, and that's too bad, I guess.
I have no problem with it. I love old stories. I love one and dones. I love all that stuff. So
I just like crazy shit. This is crazy. I loved Heroes Reborn. I mean, because it was crazy. It was just batshit crazy.
It was not good either.
Yeah. Well, some of it. There were moments of it that was good. Anyway,
it was not
good. Tons of controversy around the reboot. Go to iFanboy.com. We have a whole comments section on this episode. Tell people what you think. Do you agree with Josh? Do you agree with me and Connor? Where do you stand? Pick a side.
You're going to make banners again?
Yeah, you really have been reading Marvel for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, I have.
Where do you stand? Pick a side.
My blood.
And you can check out the show we did in DC Reboot, which only happened just before this one. And then you can listen to our audio show. We talk about this stuff every week, where we talked about the reboot news, we talk about the books.
All at iFanboy.com.
And when the books come out, we'll be talking about those in the show. So check that out at iFanboy.com.
And you can email us at contact@iFanboy.com. Call us.
888-FANBOYS 326-2697.
Follow us on the twitter.com/iFanboy. Go to facebook.com/iFanboy, and you'll be able to keep up with everything that we put up on the site, which is a lot of stuff. I work real hard at that. So if you like this conversation, follow on. You'll get that one.
Except we're going to be rebooting. So
iFanboy at one.
We're going to start from scratch.
I have to abandon the Steve identity and come up with another one.
Yeah, you might.
You're now Mark.
No, actually, no. We'll keep it all, but we're just going to change. We're going to change. Paul's now going to be Ned. It'll be a retcon, and he's an alien.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think that'll be big. Could you be a gorilla-based alien?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Make Mike a woman.
Right, no, I understand that now.